Hello and welcome back to another breaker video on the second channel. In this video I am continuing my EVA career save with running Heigi Kerman over to the runway where I am going to construct a truck to hopefully move things around and do science. This took 10 minutes in game time at 4 times time warp, so that was probably around 2-3 minutes real time of just constantly running a Kerbal over. And here she is arriving at the parts laying all over the ground. You can see I exited 4 times time warp there because I didn't want the wheels to freak out with the 4 times time warp. So I needed Heigi Kerman because some of the parts were too heavy for Bill to lift on his own, such as that big engine there. So that's what I've constructed so far, just those 2 bits together. This construction ended up being a little bit messy, as always. I didn't want to put the wheels on straight away because I knew the physics would freak out if I did that. You'll see in a minute I end up doing that anyway and the physics freaked out. So I try attaching the wheels with it upside down, but then I found out it was too heavy for even both of them to lift up. So I had to detach one of the wheel segments and then reattach it later, and it was upon reattaching it when I had the physics freak out. So now I will attach the cabin onto the front, and now I'm gonna have to try pushing them towards each other, which is quite a struggle when it's on 2 wheels and they both keep sliding around. And I ended up having to detach the cabin again to stop it from sliding so much, and then moving them closer together. And here is where the physics freaks out. The truck jumps into the air and does a somersault, landing back on its wheels again. And now it's time to test this new truck by getting Bill on board and seeing how well it moves around. And problems are already evident by the fact the controls are inverted. So I click control from here and the controls are immediately normal. Now I move it next to these rocket engines here, where I will attach the fuel tank and one of the engines to do a few contracts actually, to test the engines. So there I am attaching the fuel tank and attaching the engine. And here I am about to fire the engine. There I am firing it. and the contract is complete. I decide to go around with it a bit just for fun. And the next engine I will test is the LVT-45 swivel, as that one has less time on its contract. That one needed both Bill and Heige to lift up because it's quite a heavy engine. And that's another contract complete. And now I run over Heige Kerman. Then I get Bill out and Heige to detach the engine, and I recover it. And then after recovering it, I get the next contract to test the other engine. I can't remember what that's called now. I think the other one was called the BA2 Flicker, the first one. I think this one's like the BA8, but I can't remember its name. So there I am testing it, another contract complete. Coming back around again to Heige Kerman. And I will detach this engine again and recover it. Maybe I shouldn't have recovered these engines, maybe I could have used them for more rocketry. Here you can see I am taking the Kerbals on a ride to do some science spam around the Space Center. So Bill is doing EVA reports around. Heige Kerman really doesn't like going around on that truck. I nearly flipped it just then, as you may have noticed. You may notice in a bit later that I do end up flipping the truck, and you can see Heige Kerman flew off the side due to my harsh turning. Then I go to the R&D facility to get more science. Then the flagpole, and I crash into it. That crash would have probably knocked it over, but it stayed upright because this is Kerbal, and I crashed into it again. Then I go to the administration building, and then I go to the tracking station. Oh, actually I'm doing a bit in between the tracking station and the VAB, then the tracking station. Heige Kerman really doesn't like laying down there. Then I go along the crawler way to the launch pad, doing some quick science on the move, going past this capsule here, and using Heige Kerman to attach it to the back. This capsule ends up getting destroyed later. You may have noticed I nearly flipped it again. And here is where I actually flip it, destroying the fuel tank, and later on I destroy the capsule trying to right it again. Here I am trying to right the truck again, which is currently upside down. So here I go trying to attach it to the cabin, but that won't work because that capsule cannot be surface attached. So I find a node there, so I attach it there and see what happens. That bumps it up, but makes the situation worse. So I take it off again and attach it to the rear. I attach it inside first, and that causes it to explode and flips it back upright. The truck started running away because it was all bent out of shape, so I did some time warp to do a very cheaty way of repairing it back into shape again and stopping it from moving. And then I brought the truck over to some more rocket parts that happened to be on the runway. You may notice there is a rocket fin on the top of it. That is because I flipped it again off camera and I had to try and put it back upright again. So here I am attaching the various rocket parts to the truck to transport them over to the launch pad. As you can see, that is not the easiest job in the world. And then Bill gets back on board and drives the truck back over to the launch pad. Because this next launch was so unplanned, there was so much off-camera mucking about with just seeing what I would end up doing, and that ended up with the truck being driven back and forth like 5 times. So I decided to not include that in the video because I think that would be quite boring. There I am going past the mission control, trying to follow these roads. I'm a bit nervous now of flipping, so I'm trying to go slower. And then I end up going up the sides of the crawlerway, which nearly flipped me anyway. And here we are at the launch pad with more rocket parts scattered about. I ended up having 2 of those hammer SRBs, which I never ended up using because they're too heavy for all 3 Kerbals here to lift up. Jebediah is here. I can't remember where he is, though. I think he may be in the capsule. Then I attach the 2 trusses together to provide a crude ladder for Heige to climb up and attach the capsule to the top of the rocket. Bill nearly knocked it over with EVA follower, and here you can see I am attaching the fins to the rocket because I don't want this rocket flipping out of control. It's very hard to attach these fins correctly because there's no symmetry mode in EVA construction or even Kerbal inventory system construction, which is what I'm using because I find it less buggy. Here is Jebediah on the rocket doing science on the launch pad, and we are approaching time to launch. Just correcting some staging there. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, lift off. Jeb is smiling like he always does, doing science in flight. And there is stage separation. It always focuses on the previous stage because of the way I construct the rockets. And this flight I'm trying to get to space because my previous 2 flights didn't quite get there. My first flight reached about 10 kilometers. That one I wasn't trying to go to space. The second flight I added a second stage with a single small fuel tank with this engine, and that got me to like 45 kilometers. This flight, I'm trying to get to space, but you can see the engine runs out of fuel 10 kilometers short. So, Jebediah is not going to space today, though I did set an altitude record and a speed record of 790 meters per second. There's the capsule separation and re-entry, which doesn't get that hot because it's not too fast. Parachute deploy. And coming in to land in the water again. We are at the end of the video. Remember, if you didn't enjoy the video, to dislike and unsubscribe, and I guess you'll see the next career video, maybe.